first episode of the series was actually the first episode that we filmed after the COVID restrictions and suggestions about masks started to come in. So it was the first time that we were asked to sit with Mark so that nobody moved any closer than they needed to be.
Yeah, we brought everyone in one by one, and they all sat in chairs that were spread out. It took a lot of extra time to be safe. It was complicated.
Now, y'all may not know that I'm a germaphobe, so during this time when we were doing the tapings of COVID-19, every time I was watching wherever Dan was putting pins down, I was looking, and that expression that I had was for real.
Filming during this pandemic can suck as well because you have to practice your social distance, and I mean, not trying to say that we got a bunch of old people in here, but you know, they play a big part of it because they don't want to get sick, and it's a mess. One thing I can say about doing this pandemic, we nailed everything. No one ended up getting sick or nothing like that.
I shot this insert at home on my living room wall, and that right there is Rosemary Fitzgerald with her horse. She was part of our acting community, and unfortunately she passed away this year. And now here's Habib, who came in to play the cultist.
Precious Meadows is a multi-cam setup, and it kind of puts me in the mind of like the 90s sitcoms like Saved by the Bell. And I guess Martin, is Martin considered one? Fresh Prince, you know, those style type deals.
The Canadian cult guru had the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen, and I kept thinking, darn, he's cute. It's too bad I'm too old.
We're about to flash back to our original pilot from 2005, which we shot in LA. Rajiv, do you remember how we came up with the idea of bringing an Islamic youth group to the nursing home in the original pilot? Do you remember how that came about?
I went to nursing homes and sang Christian songs. Like, do we ever think about the logic of why shouldn't those same nursing homes let in like Baha'i groups, Hindu groups, Muslim groups?
To the Muslims.
You know, the idea of like your senior years being a time that it doesn't just affirm the faith traditions that you follow, but maybe lets you learn about other faith traditions when groups show up. And you know they would, right? Like if it was like socially acceptable to say, hey, come talk to us. Like that's what faith groups do, right? Like, so, yeah. Idea was always really well-meaning.
The masks were so disgusting. Creative way to use them during this time. But the next day, I was driving. I stopped at a stop sign. I looked over. I'd thrown my mask over there the night before, and I looked down there, and it scared the bejeebies out of me. I was like, what is it?
Well, being an introvert anyway, it's probably interesting just to come out here and find a new family and feel comfortable to doing random things that you come up with, as far as having somebody covered in flour to orange people to graduation caps and gowns with bows and puffs on them.
The development of these characters actually started in class in January, where I had all the actors make comedic faces and then I screen grabbed them.
My favorite memory was sitting at home getting an email with a picture that I had of me with the face, and Dan going, "This is your character. I need you to make this face at all times during the show." And me trying to figure out how to do this and how to talk doing it.
She did a great job. I think the flower coming down on Matt's head here was inspired by a Family Ties episode. I seem to recall flour coming down in the Keaton's kitchen, if I'm not mistaken.
We had to sit there and make these ridiculous faces while like admiring the new guy. And we had like the fans blowing on us and everything, you know, to make our hair move. And it was the cheesiest and most embarrassing thing I think I've ever done in my life.
Physical comedy of dumping a light box of flour and acting it to be heavy on my head.
Yeah, that was totally from Family Ties, now that I think of it.
It took about a week from that time in multiple showers, and I would still pick little like pieces of plaster almost in my hair. And I was just like, what the, how is it still in there? No, it was like bread. It just solidified, and it was just really interesting.
In this episode, we had the audio disappear miraculously, so we had to reshoot. It was quite strange because it was going fine all day, and then at the end of the day, it just vanished, which was kind of sad.
Yeah, that audio disappearing made us have to reshoot the final scene of this episode, which we did.
I love the scene where everyone is wearing masks with fur.
Yeah.
That's so funny and so gross, but so hilarious watching all of these older people having masks with fur for a religious reason.
Again, puppet hair glued to masks, which I had to make using rubber gloves and a mask of my own, thanks to COVID.
And for me to deliver that wonderful line about it's anthrax and watch the rest of the seniors get up and start scattering like cockroaches when you turn the light on in a room.
I remember going down into the basement and thinking this is creepy, just like the basement was I had at home. We had a monster behind the furnace, so I thought.
I was not aware of the episode with Brett in the shower, and I'm just saying that when I'm in a nursing home someday, I just hope there's some guy like Brett around because he looks pretty hot, and since he had to get that goo out of that hair, I think I would be very happy to help him do that.
I mean, nothing really in this episode especially was my least favorite, except maybe being in a shower and me being like body self-conscious or something like that and shirtless. I don't know.
Every scene you've seen up until now has been shot in Belleville in a museum that used to be a funeral home, including down in that basement that's all musty.
When we're in the basement filming in that little creepy room, I was back in the corner, and up in the corner was a spider web. And I'm wondering, okay, what spider made it, and should I be worried?
This scene, however, was shot in St. Louis a few weeks later, and Karen doubled as both an actor and my PA.
I actually play a nurse and the assistant to the director of the nursing home, so I kind of got a couple of roles there, and it was fun. Just a lot of fun watching everybody in their different characters and their costumes, and just the way it's all playing out on the screen is just great.
So Brett was clean shaven in the shower, and now he has a beard, which was a continuity error that we didn't catch, so we made a joke about it in episode 7, the last episode.
She's one of my favorite characters on the show because she makes me laugh a lot because she has her own style, like from the look to just the way she sounds. Like she's funny.
I've seen her do improv, so I know how funny she is, but she just always has this bizarre character, and this one is no exception.
I've got to go help.
It was really funny watching Kelly try to get through that line, and I felt like everybody was so proud of her when she actually did finally say the line that I don't even remember if anybody knew the next line after the fact.
I thought it would be funny to use all 1970s establishing shots like this ambulance.
My character, we had to carry the patient out of the room, and there's no room to hardly be in there. So it was tight quarters for me to start walking, carrying him.
When I read the script, I couldn't believe that this guy decided to pick up a cockroach, and he just suffered from oversucking.
The body that they're carrying out there was the dead body that hit a windshield in The Galoshes, which is a movie we made about 2 years ago. Anyway, here comes our sappy ending that every very special episode had to have when I was growing up. It was so important that we learned moral messages with our family situation comedies.
I loved this episode particularly because I knew that most of the people in the cast, well, half of the cast probably didn't remember the 70s because they hadn't been born yet, or the 80s, or these TV shows.
Yeah, doing the cheesy freeze frame had to happen. Anyway, I did our only ending with bloopers in it on this ending because Kelly's struggle with her line reading was just so funny. I'm not normally a huge fan of bloopers. But in this case, it warranted it because she was just too funny.
Kelly, when she ran out, I forgot which character choked on the cockroach and thought it was a Butterfinger or something like that, but she just kept saying the wrong line over and over. So when I was on set filming that, it was just funny.
The word if. smacked right in the middle.
Okay, episode 2, they all open with a bumper for the Richard Simmons Show.
In the beginning, this episode was pretty cool, but in the beginning, I would have to say it was kind of a challenge because I've never done like a 3-camera setup. And by me working with you and you pretty much showing me the ropes, I learned to get comfortable in regards to learning how to shoot different shots, angles and, just setting up shots, period. So I would say it was pretty cool.
Excuse me, I am one of those veterans.
So the opening scene actually in this episode too, it was interesting because that was filmed a different day. None of my co-stars were there, so I was looking at just certain spots where they were sitting. And I was getting lines delivered, and Dan was actually directing me where to look at during my lines to receive as well.
So my favorite part of this was definitely the interjection of Trump and the sex appeal, because they should have had those in regular commercials. That was classic. I really enjoyed that.
This episode was certainly one of our most political ones, or the only one. I referenced Trump in past tense, which was deep wishful thinking on my part at the time. This was a really heavy time period in my life, and comedy was my only way out, as usual. So I love how Dennis's character always had his mouth open here.
See, he has some breathing issues, so he has to breathe through his mouth all the time. Libtard, skin cancer is a hoax of the Hollywood gay agenda.
I was happy with how we edited Matt in here. It's hard to believe he wasn't actually in the room. But by this time, we really had established who these characters were. We actually shot this later in the series. And so we really knew what we were doing by now. So let's talk about the theme song. I never knew that my secret dream was actually to duet on a theme song for a sitcom a la Growing Pains or Family Ties. And I was lucky enough to have Tammy Dunsing join me in a living room closet recording booth to record this duet. She was sort of the Denise Williams, if you guys know who sang Family Ties. But anyway, and now this commercial here that you're seeing is something I made in high school almost 30 years ago. Of course, the graphics are new, but the original footage is old. That's my sister and me and my high school friend Dallas, who is now a faith-based filmmaker. His dad wrote the Left Behind books, but Death of a Crime Fighter 2, The Recovery, rated R. Here we go again with the 1970s establishing shot. That's supposed to be Matt, a very skinny Matt walking in. Anyway, there's a microphone in the plant Emma is holding there. There's another microphone that's behind the laptop. We clearly forgot to hide the Apple logo on the computer there, but really the most fun was coming up with this orange spray tan concoction. I spent a good time in the grocery store finding things that were very, very bright orange. So here's Mike getting ready to spray them down. And I also made those little masks out of egg cartons and googly eyes. It was fun.
Never done this
You put some concoction together with putting a spray tan. Hell,
I particularly enjoyed the scenes with the computer, with talking on getting their email, and
So the worst part of this was the spray tan that we used.
When I learned what I was going to have to do in this episode, several things crossed my mind. Was the spray tan going to get in my eyes? Was my face going to burn from any of it? And could I get out of this episode?
Tanning goop or whatever the heck that was it Cheese Whiz or something that was being...
Catalina Island dressing mixed with Jell-O that had been sitting in room temperature for several hours and smelled like vomit. And it made me gag during that scene, and I was dying to just get it off as soon as possible.
I particularly like the slow motion, and but I made sure I kept my mouth shut, so I didn't want to have to eat it.
That was a good idea, for sure.
I actually did get one of those emails, from someone from Nigeria or elsewhere, can't remember where, but it was one of those scams. And I never got a proposal for marriage, though. I only got the request for the money and the card. And if I got a request that had a proposal in it, and the guy looked like Brian, Well, I don't know what I'd do.
Well, this episode brings back memories. I had to do the same thing for my grandfather. He lived with me for a couple of years, and he kept on bringing mail to me instead of emails. And I had to convince him that it was fake. He's been wanting to send money to people.
So after they rinsed off the orange jello and salad dressing, the actors all had to apply orange body paint. Due to COVID, they had to do their own body makeup.
So I must say my favorite part of this episode was the commercial. The interracial couple, the new show, Blights. I mean, that's just so, it was hilarious. So
I had so much fun coming up with those really, really bad network sitcom promos on screen.
I did not know about any of these scenes about the orange and all that, but the first thing that came to mind, I was thinking, oompa, oompa, oompa-dee-doo. They look like Oompa Loompas on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I'm just saying, they look like Willy Wonka to me. Oompa Loompas.
I would love to have participated in that because I look good in orange.
What's memorable was the orange Donald Trump spray can. I remember putting that stuff on. It was like putting on house paint. I'm thinking, is this stuff going to come off? I'm thinking like.
My favorite scene in this was definitely sitting next to Brett, and like I said, my heart is still all aflutter, and being able to tell him he's still so handsome right before he got married.
The scene where I'm calling the police, and Brian was actually behind the scenes saying, repeating the fives in front of me, and I was trying so hard not to just break character and just die of laughter right there. Just, I don't know why I found it so funny, but it was a great time.
Also, I love when the women are looking through the window thinking that Brian is their Nigerian prince. I think that was classic.
The elderlies, they were under the impression that I was a Nigerian prince coming to sweep them off their feet, which was pretty funny.
I thought he was pretty cute. I sure did.
He wants to marry me right out there. Wait.
Brian had a very good sense of humor about being the object of desire for these mature women who all seemed to believe that he was their prince.
And I'm really just a police officer, a defunded police officer at that.
Richard Simmons tomorrow morning.
Okay, here we go. Camping in the backyard.
There was a part in the beginning Dan cut to me, and that was actually in part of me breaking character. That was just a genuine reaction of just the whole scene and just everything set up and everything.
My wig, I like my wig. I'm just saying, I like my wig. I bought it, cost a little pretty on sale at one of the wig stores. And I share with my family what I do in film acting. And my son, Tyus, who's a Wilhelmina world model, Tyson Manuel, world model, he said, Mom, what you do with your hair? I said, what do you mean what I do with my hair? Where's your natural? I said, I have to wear hair and look different for every scene. It's a film acting class. He said, then grow your own hair out. I was offended because I can't grow my hair. Look, I can't grow my hair out like that. I wanted long, Rapunzel hair.
Really flashing back.
Right at the end, you can tell I broke character because Tim Wesselman, I could not stand him looking right at me, and for some reason it just got to me, and I couldn't handle it anymore, and I started breaking and just cracking up.
I wanted the camping set to look really fake, like a bad sitcom set. So that's why we made the fence out of cardboard. And anyway, it was fun to work on a soundstage. Okay, so here's another commercial coming up here that we made when I was a senior in high school. I must have really hated how creamy Kleenexes were becoming.
First, our boxes are filled with lotion. Then we add the tissues.
Yeah, this was a commercial we made in high school for Poofs Plus. And that's my sister's hand, and that's my sister. And there I am, chewing the scenery.
Filming this episode was just a whole lot of fun, and it was a big ensemble for everybody. You know, I feel like you had just about everybody in this episode.
That scene was a lot of looking, listening, and feeling, and just the whole, the dial, the medical dial thing was just freaking hilarious. I was fortunate enough to spend some time with the dial with my family.
Yeah, we bought this mannequin on Facebook Marketplace, and since I don't live anywhere near the city, I asked Craig to pick it up for me and to keep it in his house for a few weeks.
Dan Steadman had us meet a guy in a parking lot, and we picked up this wonderful doll, and before she was needed in this awesome scene. We had about a week or two with her, and she got to know our family. It was pretty sweet.
In order to fit this doll, this mannequin in the zippered bag, I had to dismember it. At least chop off the legs in my garage using a crowbar. The thing just did not want to break apart. So a car drove by and I realized I should probably shut the door.
I will say that unveiling Joe the mannequin was really kind of scary. I was teaching CPR, and also the whole time that was going on, I was singing in my head the Facts of Life theme because it had that reference to Joe.
Boy or a girl? Out with it. Hey, we need to know, male or female. I mean, there's nothing more important to our generation than gender clarity.
Yeah, I'm most proud of that gender clarity line.
One of my lines was the director's favorite line in the whole series. I mean, it just blew my mind.
Woman of color, per usual, show them how it's done.
No ma'am.
Why not?
I'll do it.
Like, you know I love Matt. Come on, I'm not gonna say like, Brett. His name on the show is Brett, correct? Brett, that's my guy. Only because he thinks he's 80 and he's 23.
And that was not the original idea behind Precious Meadows, but I had this random memory of when I was 23 and I used to visit my grandparents in Florida, and within a day I'd start to act like I was a senior citizen, complaining about these old bones and back in my day. So the idea of adapting to your surroundings has always been an intriguing idea to me.
My teenagers loved her. I mean, we played a lot of pranks. We put her in the beds of the brother. My son Brett woke up with the doll in his bed, so a lot of shenanigans at the house. It was good stuff.
What freaked you out about the doll?
I think it was the trach. I think the trach is what got me. Just that extra hole there, just didn't really know what that was all about. Yeah. Yeah.
As Henry, I'm not sure exactly why I had the Viagra there, but it was my Viagra, and I was suitably embarrassed at the end that it was me, but
that photo of Connecticut cousins is once again me, my sister Sarah, and Dallas, my friend. Back in '92, we were always doing photo shoots for fun, making fun of garage bands, fake sitcom advertisements for shows like Friends and Seinfeld. We even made up a kid show called Kidspiration. So we were always just doing photo shoots for things that didn't exist. And I am still glad I have those photos because they've come in handy now with Precious Meadows and these bumpers for fake network shows.
Well, the funniest part of the scene nobody saw, because you've got a bunch of older people playing even older people, and the director has us getting down on the ground, have to get up, get down. I mean, that was the best comedy ever, watched us trying to get up off the ground.
And the other thing that was very funny that I didn't recognize is my friend Joanne's character is the real person is nothing like that legalistic religious person, but she plays it well, and every time she ends a scene, she goes, Angelique, I'm not like that, am I? I said, no, you're not, it's just acting. And she goes, but I mean, I just feel like I'm just being so religious. I said, well, that's the role. So, but she's perfect, she's an outstanding actress, and she's nothing like that. Joanne is nothing like that.
I, to be honest, don't remember where the idea for this Viagra thing came from.
It's fun playing a character that's so unlike you.
I'm kind of mocking here how sitcoms like to spell out every plot contrivance with like big black Sharpie markers to make sure the audience really understands what's about to happen.
That was the last episode that we filmed before face masks became a thing. It was almost like a look into the future, but the Korean death masks were kind of so Kirk, who's broke, will do anything to make a buck.
Well, when you're in a nursing home, getting out, it doesn't matter where you go, it's good. So
This scene really shows how Kirk Hammond's real friends were the women in the group. These women are down for any adventure that Kirk takes them on, including wearing Korean face masks. I really wanted to show everyone having a lot of fun in their backyard adventure.
I think they had a little bit of everything in that cocktail. A little bit here, a little bit there. Maybe. Left out again. Darn. Aw, shucks.
They were camping in the Viagra, you know, tents went haywire. Everybody was up in there just... So.
The orgy scene was actually very interesting, and Jeannie was a great co-star in the tent scene, and just the baby oil that had to get sprayed on my face as to appear as sweat.
I had a tent. I was inside the tent. Larry, he had a tent, and we were just shaking that thing up,
The pure, unadulterated, just there was so much lust on the screen. Yeah.
Lily and Matt, they were doing the damn thing in that tent.
Jeannie was a great sex partner, actually. And if she ever needs a tent partner, you know who to call.
Bedelia and I still think that's a creepy-ass dummy.
I was wrapped in an Afghan. It's one of those that's got holes in it. And so when I popped out of the tent, I just hope nothing else popped out too.
We let our frisky out, you know, every once in a while, and this was a good scene to be able to do that.
Filming that episode was about 2 weeks, I think, before the first quarantine, before everything shut down, so we had to film that just in time.
It was funny to see the seniors in the nursing home outside, and it was also interesting putting in and setting up the set in order to shoot it, because it looks really great on the screen. It was very difficult to put together and keep it that way. So that was kind of fun to see as well.
That was actually not Marilyn's actual head that gave me CPR. That was a wig on Dan's hand, lowered the wig of Marilyn's head down to my face.
Punky Brewster as one of my favorite shows. I remember the very special episode when one of the kids got locked in the refrigerator and needed CPR. I don't remember the orgy scene in that Punky Brewster. I must say, that was a little bit of a surprise to me, and I could not stop laughing. Yeah, Punky Soleil Moon Frye would be shocked.
Okay, moving on to episode 4. This was inspired by the facts of life when the girl stole a blouse from Mrs. Garrett.
Really like the flashback to the boy to the nose.
Yeah, if you've seen The Boy with the Nose, you know that the clown on screen is me when I was 16 on my public access TV show. We turned that experience of mine into a mockumentary film in 2018. But really, it's ever since I worked on that 70s show, I wanted to do my own three-camera sitcom on a stage, and got to do it.
The concept of multicam is different than narrative film and commercials because there are, just like it says, multi-cameras. So there are 3 cameras set up getting different angles, which as an actor makes you aware that it's not just one shot. You are having to be aware of all of your physicality and exactly where your eye line sight is, and just knowing that every angle is being seen.
It was really hard trying to cry during that scene, because when somebody says cry, you just start cracking up laughing for no apparent reason.
The beginning of that episode was hilarious. I love the references to 2020.
And it's interesting to actually do comedy when there's no one reacting. So when you don't have a live audience, you really have to stay on top of the moment with all the other performers in the scene, because you're not hearing the reactions. But in post, when you get to watch it, it just that laugh track brings it all together. It's so much fun.
I enjoyed the inserts that were put in throughout the show. I also like the fact that I normally will show up to the shoot and have no idea what is, because I've never seen the script, and I never know what I'm going to see. And it's always interesting to just try to come in, do whatever we're supposed to do, and then try to figure out how it all gets put together.
What can I say? I like a little mystery when I'm shooting. The only person to ever really see the full script are the two camera operators, Brian Lockett and Larry Scott, and maybe Matt Helsing, since he's basically in every scene of each episode. But this was an episode that we brought in a guest star, my friend Jessica, and here we go.
It was a joy to be working with the extremely talented guest star, as you called her, Jessica Ambule.
Working with Jessica was just the greatest thing. In rehearsal, I made her break. Jessica is such a sweet person, and at the end of the first scene where she blows me off, I called her a bitch, and her face just went.
It's an honor to work with Tom for multiple reasons. One is he has a passion for performing. When he's there, he is all in. But also he is all in life. You know, you run across very few people like him that have faced adversity with such spirit and heart, and he just doesn't give up.
That's true. Okay, so here's the set. This was a lot of work and a lot of fun to build. The clothing you see on these racks are clothes from our previous movies. My basement is absolutely filled with wardrobe. I spray painted those mannequin heads you see on the shelf in the background in my garage. But my favorite prop is the slogan for Couth. The slogan on the sign behind her says, "Be brave enough to show your wealth." That makes me laugh. It seems like the kind of sign you would actually read in a Beverly Hills boutique run by this truly terrible woman.
That storekeeper was a real crab ass.
So one of the fun things about Dan's character he created is that Boomish has this really interesting hairdo, and he prepped finding it and had it all ready and then forgot it. So ironically, he gave me a wig from a previous character of another actor, and we just made it work.
Not only did I forget her wig, I also left her 3 outfits in my garage. And so when we got to set, we just had to improvise with the clothes there.
When we got to set, there was this great leopard print shirt that just screamed Boomish. So we put that in there, and then we grabbed scarves that were already on set, and to be honest, it worked beautifully.
So in this episode, as you can see when we're all in Couth, those pants you had me wear were about 4 sizes too big. And I was just swimming in them, and I had no belt or anything.
Watching Matt and not breaking up because he had these pants that were huge, and 2 times he had to pick something up and he couldn't decide with his hand. If he did it, he would drop his pants. So I was watching that, and I didn't break up. So
Matt wears boxer briefs. This is something we now know.
Stephanie putting the needle nose pliers in her bra, I don't know if that was in the script or not, but she pulled off. No blood was shed either.
There's a lot of nudity in that scene, so thank God for digitizing.
The pixelating was, I'm glad you had that. That would have been rated R probably. So.
Joanne, she's pretty cool too, only because she's spiritual. You know, she's in the God, and we don't talk like this, we don't do this, that, and the third. So, I mean, everybody's different. They have their own character. That's what I like about it. But
I got on set that day, the one thing I had on my mind was brownies. I love brownies. And just a few feet away from me on the birthday table was a plate filled with homemade chocolate brownies. Jeannie lovingly made the brownies for us and did offer all of us brownies after we were finished.
And I didn't get any of the damn brownies either, because I wasn't at the birthday party. Apparently I was on my meds.
That's probably the worst Christmas song I've ever heard.
The singer, the background singer in the first part of the scene there was just brutal.
His name is Steve Malden. I found him on YouTube.
Joanne's character pulling the dress out of the bag was the best. It just went on, and all of the sparkles that she just couldn't tolerate it.
I had hurt my back about a week before, and this was like couple days after I finally was getting up and moving around a little bit. So when I was shuffling out there in that one scene when we're leaving, like, that wasn't acting. You know, it was hurting.
I like awkward humor, so that's why I really stretched out this Oh Holy Night moment in post-production in the editing room.
Joanne could not get that scripture to save her life. She'd go, oh, I don't know, I can't, it just doesn't roll on my tongue. And I joked and said, you don't know your Bible?
The more you know, don't do drugs. The more you know, and having a whole scripture, that was just beautiful. That just cracked me up.
Because she couldn't remember that scripture. The fact that Dan put it in there like they do in churches, they put the scripture that you're saying, that made it even more hilarious. And when she sees it, if she hasn't already, that is classic. It was really, really funny. I like that part, the captions.
I like a good theological debate in a wacky family sitcom. It gives some tension between characters, and, you know, sitcoms would really benefit if they would discuss the existence of God so much more in Paul.
More suitable to wear.
Yeah, my little yawn, yes, because they were boring me, yes. Noticing, you know, a pattern here of the nurse having sounds come out of her mouth.
Sound effects are hilarious. Oh my goodness, they're just. It definitely set the tone for this show, and all these little added things you don't see them in a typical like narrative film, or even, you know, in most things. That's the fun, to add the flavor to this project.
Sound effects in the inserts were not in the script, so it was a challenge to think of things like Wilford Brimley talking about diabetes and finding that Oh Holy Night, and really letting my freak flag fly, as they say.
Well, the scene in the boutique got very chaotic after the policeman came in, but I kept getting distracted by Matt trying to hold up his old man pants.
One of my favorite moments is watching Matt try to keep his pants up the entire shoot.
He was making me laugh quite a lot. In fact, I told him between takes, it's like, don't ever wear those pants outside of here, ever.
This part and this part.
Don't be fresh.
That's another moment you're only going to find in Precious Meadows. You're not going to see anything like that in any of my films. With this show, we just got idiotic.
It was a treat to see Jessica in this episode. She did a terrific job. And I think the young man who played the policeman could arrest people.
Get several takes of Evie doing a pirouette spin scene. We couldn't quite get it right, and I'll never forget Evie's balance and her grace in this beautiful scene as I became nauseous watching her spin repeatedly.
Come on, Miss Abigail, Jessica. She made me look good. I just say that. That's my girl. I love Jessica.
It's not a common reaction that I usually know about, so
I guess it's up to me. I was so excited to do this episode, but Dan had to keep reminding me to act like a little old lady. And I'd forget. I'd want to move, and then I'd want to, run like I normally do or whatever. And he said, remember, you're a lot older, so I kept having to, crouch down and get into my character as Ivy.
I just got to say the two best lines, the fingering lines, and the Brian saying about the steak knife. Those are the best out of the whole thing.
That's one of the loves of acting, is being able to bring a character to life that's not like yourself.
You know how embarrassing it is working for a police department trying to protect and serve with a steak knife? That's embarrassing.
I am the same age as the director, so almost every reference, and I remember the special episode of Facts of Life where they got caught stealing.
So I guess the moral of this very special episode is don't steal gifts for people that might get returned to the store. And if you do get caught, blame someone else.
My scene is actually a parody from Pretty Woman. And when Dan told me that, I was excited. I went back and watched it because it's been a while, and have Tom play the before and after character. It was a lot of fun to think back to that scene.
Julia freaking Roberts. Dan writes me a character to play a scene that Julia freaking Roberts did 30 years ago. And when I tell people I'm doing this scene from any women I tell that I'm doing a scene from Pretty Woman, they immediately go, big mistake, huge.
Okay, episode 5, I wanted to do a story about death, but not of one of the residents. Poor nurse Axel got axed. But this episode really was about getting Matt and Tom together on screen.
The chemistry with Matt was unbelievable. We had done an improv and acting class a couple of years before and just spit it out as a couple of gay guys, and we really enjoyed what we did. So from that point forward, I started pestering Dan to write me a character as a gay senior citizen in a romance with a much younger man. And after a year and a half of whining and stomping my feet, Dan finally caved in, and he wrote the scene, which just goes to show, if you want a scene, pester the writer.
That day, we were on set, and we got an alert that there was a crazy person on the loose in St. Louis. There was a shooting in the area, so everybody was a little bit on edge, so that added some excitement to the scene.
I totally forgot about the shooter on the loose. I was so consumed with directing, and we had some crew members that had never been on set before, so I was sort of mentoring them in the directing workshop. But this was the first episode we shot of all of them. It was in January 2020, before COVID. So there was a lot on my mind, and I forgot about the shooter.
I wasn't in that one, but I thought Matt and Tom were hysterical. Tom never ceases to amaze me. He's just like the Energizer Bunny on one leg.
I would title this episode The Matt and Tom Show. I thought it was great.
Tom and I are always together. So I was very disappointed when I didn't have a scene with Tom, but he still was outstanding with Brett. It's okay that he was with Matt, but I was so heartbroken that I wasn't in any scenes with Tom because we played real well off of each other, and I would have loved to have been in a scene with Tom for this sitcom. It would have been awesome because he's one of the best character actors I know. He really is.
That scene that went by where Matt was breathing on Tom's glasses was not in the script. I pulled Matt aside and I told him to do that because I wanted to get Tom's real reaction.
I had just started with the group in January. We did that scene episode, and then the pandemic hit, and I haven't really gotten a chance to hang around with anybody too much.
I rolled those joints myself. Bounty paper towels.
One of the great things about being an actor is you get to learn things when you're playing different roles, and I got to learn about marijuana and what it's like to be high, so I'm sure that will be a great benefit to me in the future.
The references to the military in this gave me kind of an epiphany. I was in the military, I was in the Air Force for 4 years, and it gave me the ability to go into a situation which Dan puts us into where we don't know what the hell's going on. We just do this and it'll be okay. And it is. You do a great job, Dan.
Oh, thank you. You had a scene partner there with a Rolanda.
Rolanda is hilarious. It's anytime you can be in a scene with her, it's going to be good.
It was fun finding a photo of Florence to match Matt's face to an older lady's face was a unique challenge, and I want to thank Google for that. Google image search. Okay, here comes.
Actually, in the bedroom scene, one of the funniest things was it took about 10 takes for me to get one word right the way Dan wanted it. And the word was, "Wah!" I think my voice finally broke, and that was the one that he used.
I have seen Tom in whatever character be serious, be sad, be angry. He's lonely, depressed, devious, snarky. No matter what you ask this guy to do, he does it.
He's so comedic. Everything with Tom and working with him, he tries to brighten the mood and make it funny, make it light, and keep it moving. It's so fun working directly with Tom.
I knew that there was going to be a relationship in this episode, but frankly, it was the most pathologically disturbing thing I have ever witnessed, and I hope I can watch it again without drugs. That's it.
Loved Bless Your Lucky Stars.
I really liked how it was two movies were actually integrated to each other.
And that's a scene from the Galoshes. So a number of people have told me that they've really enjoyed watching the Galoshes on Amazon Prime.
The movie The Galoshes, where we introduced the character of Kirk Hammond at a much younger age on a game show in the 70s called Bless Your Lucky Stars. I filmed that episode 4 days before my amputation. A difficult day for me physically because my leg was pretty much shot, and where we were filming was not easy to get to or get in and out of. And the men's room was all the way at the other end of the theater, and I had to go up and down stairs to get to it. But we pulled it off, and a month later we were writing scenes with me in a wheelchair. I did ad-lib the part about pulling out my catheter.
I'm like, yeah. That was your direction, Dan, but that was just gold. I'm like, hurry up, get the leg off, let's get things rolling.
And started bouncing up and down in the bed like somebody might if they were having a catheter jerked out so they could have sex.
This was the most fun I've had in an episode. and the part about the issue with the phone, it wasn't really acting.
Oh, it was really that confusing?
No, I still have those issues.
That was a lifetime ago. Yeah. I remember it was very cold, and I remember my hair was browner back then.
And it made him very sick. So it was really kind of a stressful time on set, and for Daniel, I felt sorry for him. But he got through it, and he died like a trooper.
As Tom said earlier, Matt and Tom had done an improvisational exercise in class, and they had really made the greatest odd couple in a partnership. So once we had the opportunity with this show, I wrote this episode first, of course. And I'm glad I did this one first because we obviously had no idea what was coming. The year of COVID, we obviously couldn't have filmed scenes in bed and supposed nudity and all that stuff. So we just really had no idea what the year had in store for us. But this was the very first, closing scene where we were all learning very special morals for a very special episode. TV is a lot more subtle now, but when I was growing up, they just preached on television. They loved to preach at you, and nothing was left to interpretation. But anyway, it was really fun to wrap up everything that these characters had learned. And I kind of wish I'd done that in every single episode, and not just this one. But anyway, yeah, they were all learning very valuable lessons.
I will not be doing cigarettes anymore.
See, the morals worked. Kelly stopped smoking. It seems that we all learned a very valuable lesson. Capital V, capital V, capital L. Okay, episode 6, we're going to the funeral home episode. This is kind of a continuation of the last one.
That place we were at was so cold. And then when I went up for my first line, I was so excited and so nervous that I flung my hand up and hit the boom mic, and I think I made Dan's ears bleed because it was so loud.
Our friend Jessica Ambule, who you saw play Bulmish in the shoplifting episode, allowed us to shoot this computer room scene in her office in Collinsville. And, so Janet is wearing that scarf on her head because she forgot her wig that day. And we just made do.
I like her moves.
And then I really love how when Matt enters the scene, for the first time in the series, the audience claps for him, as they used to do on sitcoms.
Speaking of tragic, I guess you haven't heard. Last night we...
In every episode, there's a build-up to the theme song. And there's always a part to where Matt is just constantly, telling a story about what happened in his lifetime, which we know damn well he's not 80, but he's talking about he was in Vietnam, and all the elders are like, Vietnam? Or your lifetime? It's just, and it builds up. And once that catchphrase hits Vietnam or in your lifetime, then there goes the song, the introduction to the theme song to the Precious Meadows. Build up, and it does remind me of a 90s commercial, El Paso, I think it's El Paso or KC Masterpiece, one of those barbecue sauces to where they'd be like, New York City. So,
Yeah, that was just the gimmick of this particular series. In each episode, I singled out actors who kind of had the largest role in the final cut of each episode, and that's who would get chosen, like Joe Eads here and Patrick Phillips. That's who would get like opening credit acknowledgement. And once again, here's the Poofs Plus commercial that was filmed in the early 1990s. And we made this when I was really into Saturday Night Live and all their parody commercials. This was the era of Dana Carvey, Victoria Jackson, Jan Hooks, Kevin Nealon, Mike Myers, Phil Hartman, most importantly, who eventually sort of became my friend. More on that in my book if you choose to find my book on Amazon. But anyway, Bad Idea Jeans, Adobe Cars, Colon Blow, all of that. Right there, that's me walking by that poster. That is in our bathroom. Rodney made that stained glass window, and I forgot to get an establishing shot at the funeral home, so I filmed that in a bathroom in front of stained glass. This here is Joe, who's playing Marsden, who's welcoming everyone to the funeral home. The interesting thing is this is his parents' funeral home, and they allowed us to film in there, so thank you, Joe and family.
You know, as a kid, I was always told not to talk with my mouth full. Well, in this episode, I got to do just that.
I'm pretty sure that Nell, the character Nell, and maybe a couple other of the ladies were actually naked under their muumuus, and that was a disturbing thing on its own.
Oh, golly, I suppose I should help since I'm likely the eldest.
The funeral episode, I did not know who died. And when we were filming this episode, I had no idea what they were talking about, and I couldn't figure it out. So I'm glad now I'm able to understand what had happened.
And I walked into Castley's and didn't see anybody from Circa.
Yeah, Marilyn showed up to the funeral home location about 3 hours earlier than she was scheduled to be there.
I walked down the hall and I walked into a room and it was filled with people at a wake. And I realized then that I was in the wrong place, so I turned myself around, and as I was walking out, Mr. Castley himself came in and he asked me if he could be of help. And I said, well, yes. I said, would you please put these deviled eggs in your refrigerator till I come back? And of course, he very graciously did.
Yeah, the deviled eggs were good. It's a good thing I like deviled eggs. We had quite a few to eat, and it's a good thing I hadn't eaten beforehand. Otherwise, probably would have wanted to go in the back room and take a nap.
And after a while, they got really soupy under the lights, and the place reeked of deviled eggs. That was one thing. Not because it was a funeral home.
Well, everyone loves a good shot of a mob crowd, and this is an angry mob charging into the room looking for heating vents. You know, when you shoot with everyone, it can be really overwhelming, for me as a director at least. There are just so many shots to get. There are so many people to cover. You want to make sure you don't forget anyone, and you don't want people sitting around for longer than they need to be. So we were doing a lot here with a very minuscule crew.
This was his last name?
Really, 4 of us worked on this project, which was me, Larry, Kelly, who does sound, and of course, you know, you, Dan Steadman. It can be a bit challenging because you can, sometimes, you know, Kelly could not be here to help out, and then someone has to play sound, and then you just have to know, like, everything has to be thought out as far as the location, where you're going to shoot, your angles, and just everything plays a big factor. And to me, it can be kind of difficult to shoot with a 3 to 4 person crew.
This needs a rating on this show because it's not appropriate for children.
No, Precious Meadows is not for children. This is a sitcom about adult people. Very mature adult people. So anyway, getting back to the filming of this, and Shelley was really funny singing here. Of course, I pitched her voice up to make it shrill and high-pitched, to make this Amazing Grace seem funnier. And then right after this is really one of my favorite wrap-up scenes coming up here with Matt and with Tim Weisman and with Dan McGee. It was just a lot of fun.
I'm not sure what Matt's going to do when he grows up, but he might want to think about acting because he does a hell of a job.
Yes, the scene was fun, I guess, because the pressure was off. Most of the cast had been wrapped and they'd gone home because, of course, we shoot this out of order. It's never continuous. But here we were able to just relax and enjoy and try to get the shots we really wanted, and really enjoy filming this scene with these three talented actors. Yeah, it was great.
As a past smoker, I can relate to all of that. Please do not smoke cigarettes. They are hazardous to your health. This has been your public service announcement.
Okay, we shot this insert of Daniel months earlier in St. Louis. I like the way the shots line up. You can't even tell that he's not in the casket.
Daniel was not actually in the casket at the funeral home, okay? This was filmed, I think, near downtown, months before COVID, and I physically actually touched his lips and everything, put that little toilet paper in his mouth, and it just kind of shows how social media exploits just everybody's vulnerabilities today.
The ending here was inspired by Mike Seaver telling America to say no to blow. And Matt delivered this speech perfectly, directly to camera.
And so when Matt came out of character and he went and did that, I just lost it. I went back to the 80s. Apparently, that's actually what Kirk Cameron almost verbatim said during an episode of Growing Pains, which is hilarious.
Thank you to the magical technology of YouTube. I was able to find that speech, which really had stuck in my brain, so it obviously worked. I always did say no to blow every single time it was offered to me.
Circa 87 cares. Circa 87 really does care.
Okay, let's go on to the last episode of Season 1 of Precious Meadows. This episode is called The Gang Experiences Flashbacks, and I always hated clip shows. Every time one would begin, I could immediately tell, oh, this isn't a normally plotted episode. We are in for basically a rerun. And they don't do them, thankfully, anymore, I don't think. But they were really padding episodes back then. You could tell that they were just filling them in. Like the Golden Girls did them all the time. Family Ties was a terrible culprit. I'm sure Mr. Belvedere tried to milk past episodes. But with this clip show, other than that tent scene you just saw, most of the clips you see in this episode, flashbacks, are not things you saw in the series. They are moments that got cut out of other episodes for one reason or other, and I still liked them, and so I wanted to bring them back and make sure that they, made it into the series. Somehow. And what better way to do that than a good old-fashioned clip show? Anyway, so yeah, most of this was new footage.
In addition to the acting, I've been a writer since I was like 18 years old, and I've been, the last few years I've been doing some screenwriting.
Yeah, Joseph is in our screenwriting mentorship and has been for about 2 years, and he got to write some bonus material that we did over during the pandemic, stuff that we did over Zoom. And so anyway, but getting back, this was really an enjoyable episode to film because we were in one location and we only had 6 actors on set. It was all filmed in one morning. And later that afternoon, the other 20 or 30 actors recorded fake advertisement spots in an exercise we were doing on commercial acting. So everybody got to act that day. But I especially like this backstory parodying the tragic story with the Rosenbergs.
Chicagoland atomic cake.
That was a goat from the internet? How did you do that?
Yes, Marilyn, the internet is full of sound effects. I don't know. It just cracked me up. Speaking of cracking me up, it was fun to shop for old man clothes for Matt to wear. I especially enjoyed that polyester shirt he has in this, and the white vest and a cigar in his front pocket.
Theme song is one of my favorites, you know. Tammy, that's the name I was looking for. My girl Tammy, she played a big part of it, along with Dan Steadman. I like the theme song. The only thing that really sticks out in my head is 23. That's catchy.
As I said earlier, really singing the theme song as a duet with Tammy Densing really was a personal highlight of my sad showbiz career. Anyway, this commercial, Audio Video Plus, was something I found on YouTube. And it just brought back memories of Friday nights, Saturday nights in the 90s, going to a video store, Blockbuster. I think it was $3.99 for a rental. You could get maybe 5. I would rent, 5 at a time and easily drop $20 inside the video store. We didn't have any of these titles necessarily in the Christian bookstore that I worked in. All we would rent would be VeggieTales, Davy and Goliath, movies starring Kirk Cameron, and movies starring Stephen Baldwin, I guess. It was the late 90s when I worked there. So anyway, getting back to the production, which is coming back soon. This is a long commercial. We really had a lot of fun with costuming. Most people supplied their own clothes, but some of the lead characters, their wigs were supplied. Their clothes I got. There's this thrift store in Park Hills, Missouri. Really feels like the middle of nowhere, but clothing was $1 a piece, and so I would just load up on senior citizen clothing. And we're back.
Listen, Brett, you're not even supposed to be on this computer.
He gets so creative with hiding the mics, and Tim Westman's character, they put a boom mic in, let's just say, a special place, and I wasn't sure if it was a boom mic or he was just happy to see me, and I was just like, yeah, I have boom mic envy, so thank you.
The Lord.
I wouldn't say that.
Really? I thought he was into nihilism.
Nihilism? We hid those microphones everywhere. There is a mic on that blanket in front of Marilyn. There is a mic in the Kleenex box in front of Matt. There is a microphone inside that wicker basket in front of Craig, under a file folder. Sound is the most challenging part of filmmaking. Ideally, sound should be right in front of your mouth, but of course you can't film that way. And so you're always looking for interesting little places to hide the mic. In this case, the boom mic had a wire to it. The rest of them were wireless. And you can see the boom, the wire for the boom in the wide shot. If you see the floor right there, that green blanket is kind of on top of the cord running to the mic that was in between Tim Weisman's legs. It sounds so wrong every time we talk about it. But anyway, you got to come up with all kinds of tricks when you're doing sound for this kind of thing. And we also did what's called ADR, which is additional dialogue recording. All the lines in this episode we re-looped in case we needed them for sound. Obviously, air conditioning and heating is also an issue. This was a very hot day in the summer, and you can see the actors perspiring just a little bit. But you have to have the air off for sound.
Like this little piece over here and then that little piece over there. And it was just really gratifying today to see how these all kind of meshed together at the end. And I just want to tell you how much fun I had during the whole time. So thank you.
I'm so glad to hear that. I really do live by the philosophy that this should be fun. It's hard work and stressful, and I know that I always seem like I'm stressed out on set just because it's so many things to juggle at once. But I do believe that we're very lucky to be able to get to make movies and TV shows at our ages. And essentially, this just, continues I don't know about a circle, but continues an arc in my lifetime of throwing puppet shows in the basement, charging neighbors to come over, ticket prices to come and eat our air-popped popcorn and watch our shows in the basement, to making TV shows on public access television when I was a teenager, including a sitcom that nobody's ever seen and nobody ever will. But, I've been doing this since I was a kid, and it's an honor to get to do it as a grown-up for a living with people I love.
So physical comedy is something that's relatively new to me, and it's honestly my favorite because I'm still young, and I guess I can move my body a little bit and get banged up. And
So we were operating on a shoestring budget on this thing. So Dan called me before the scene. He said, "Craig, I need something. We need to deliver the goods here. We have a coffee cup made out of sugar, and it basically is going to crumble when you smash it into Matt's head." That was the amount there was some pressure on this shot. And we delivered. Fortunately, in that scene, I was Matt's sugar daddy. I delivered the goods. So
We had one take to do, and everyone was hoping that it would work perfectly, and we were blessed with it working perfectly.
we had one shot with it. We had one prop, and I feel like we nailed it. That just everything. It looked great. So it didn't hurt at all.
Having a concussion, and if you get hit again, it will undo your concussion, which absolutely makes no sense.
Did anybody say that's needed to make common sense? I don't remember even emphasizing that while writing this.
I want to thank our production team, Larry and Brian, who played a huge part in everything that went down.
Yes, and thank you to Kelly and Leroy and Karen, all the crew, and to all the actors that came together to make this nonsense during a very, very difficult year. We will never forget it.